The hour of convening having arrived, all members of the House will please come to the floor and take your seats. All members will report to the floor of the House. The clerk will ring the bell. We are about to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. Well, good morning, everyone. If that screen is telling the truth, today is Legislative Day 39. I hope everyone had a good weekend and ready to go to work here as we bring this thing home. Got a busy day. We're going to go through it very deliberately. Doorkeepers will please close the doors and keep them closed. We will begin our day with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 10th House District, Representative Terry Rogers. Representative Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, Day 39. So I'll keep this introduction very short, unlike Paul Battles. You know, it's amazing what you can learn about a friend when you ask them to send you their official biography. I've known this gentleman for 14 years, and of course I knew that he had a number of different degrees, but I didn't realize that he had a bachelor's degree in mathematics, that he used to teach physics. He also has a master's degree in mathematics, a master's degree in divinity, and quite frankly, right now is expecting to get a doctorate this summer. He has been well known in the community. He's been involved in all kinds of different things. He's published 2 different books. He's very well known as a motivational speaker. But what I know him as is just as a friend to the entire community. If there's ever a problem in Habersham County or Northeast Georgia, you can pick up the phone and call Pastor Mike Franklin. And he's always there with encouragement, with wisdom, with a helping hand, and whatever you may need at the time. So I think you'll really enjoy his message today. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Pastor Mike Franklin.
Thank you, Representative Rogers. You know, I'm glad to be here this morning. When you drive in Atlanta traffic, you're glad to be anywhere. To the Honorable Speaker, David Ralston, thank you for the invitation. It's a privilege to be in this place. The opportunity to address this influential and prominent body is greatly appreciated. To my representative, the esteemed Terry Rogers, thank you for your leadership. Few in our county are as highly regarded as is he. It's rare for me to hear a negative comment about him. How many politicians, or for that matter, how many preachers, Could that statement truly describe? It's not many, because not many of us would qualify. But either the people of our county are distinctly abnormal where gossip is concerned, or my friend Terry's a pretty good fella. And what about you? And what about me? One of the favorite quotes in my repertoire comes from a sermon I heard when I was a little boy. It's a shame I can't remember the minister's name so I could give him credit, but I remember what he said. He said, "You can be a male, but that doesn't make you a man. You can be married, but that doesn't make you a husband. You can be a parent, but that doesn't make you a father." There was a great amount of truth in that man's message to men. That quote reminds me of a letter I filed away many, many years ago from the newspaper column Dear Ann. It said, "Dear Ann, I married the campus hero. I felt lucky to get him. The girls in our sorority house envied me because he was so good looking and so big." How marvelous a measuring rod. "I felt like a feather in his arms despite my father telling me he was a lunkhead and that he would not treat me right. When he stood me up on dates, my father boiled, but I protected him, manufacturing excuses." Well, guess what, Ann? We've now been married 8 perfectly miserable years, and I'm still making excuses for this man. I'm fed up with his selfish ways. He puts himself before me and the kids and everything. His greatest pleasure in life is to show off his scrapbook, show off his muscles, meet with his buddies and talk about his college days. Since I'm already left out, I've decided to check out. Signed, Disillusioned. That letter confronts me regarding areas of my responsibility. To quote that old preacher, as a man, as a husband, as a father, but also as a servant of God, a grandfather, a son, a pastor, a friend, a citizen. It challenges me to, as my old baseball coach used to say, rise to the occasion. But how does one do that? In many regards, it boils down to how one measures a man or a woman, a husband or a wife, a father or a mother, a servant of God, a representative of the people. How does one measure himself or another? Is it looks? Is it shrewd manipulation of stocks and bonds? Is it building a veritable fortune? Is it climbing the corporate ladder to success or sitting on the president's chair or athletic trophies? Is it sitting on this house floor? If that's how you measure, you'll eventually say, so what? There's nothing of lasting substance here. Note this. There's nothing wrong with having those things. But the lasting substance is not found there. You measure a person by their character. Reputation is what everybody thinks you are. Character is what your family knows you are. Reputations rise and fall, but character stands the test of time. It will last when all the gossip is over. It will stand when the money and power have failed. It will remain when physical stamina has dwindled. It will prove itself when troubles strike and the whole world around us shakes. Our greatest model of character? Jesus Christ. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9, he said these words, "If anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. If anyone seeks to save his life, he will lose it. But if anyone loses his life for my sake, he shall find it." The message is simple. Not easy, but simple. To be a man or woman of character, choose to follow him. Make a decision to honor him every day with your life. Deny yourself. Choose to be selfless. Hold tightly to the promises of God and hold everything else loosely. Take up your cross daily. Fulfill your responsibilities with candid, honest, open integrity. Follow Christ because his example will always stand you in good stead. He gave himself for others. I mean, that's what this Passion Week we're in is all about. Remember, if you seek to save your life, you'll lose it. But if you seek to give yourself away, you will find what true life is really all about. In short, you'll be filled with substance, with things that last, with character, May God grant you and me the wisdom to live our lives in such a manner today. Shall we pray? Father, we stand before you today in this sacred hall of honor, in this place where policies are formed and decisions are made, in this place where decorum is necessary and lives are changed by the decisions that are made. And Father, we beseech you for the wisdom without which we cannot rule. We pray for you to grant us the grace to be the men and women of integrity and candor that you have called us to be. We ask for you, Father, in your graciousness, to pour upon us your Spirit in such measure that we can be and do what you have called us to be and to do. And in this day of partisanship and struggle in the political arena of our nation, grant us the wisdom to lay down those things that need to be laid down and pick up those things that need to be picked up. And grant us the grace to serve others with integrity and candor, with dignity. And let us be men and women of passion who follow the pursuits you have laid out for us and who make the decisions that are in the best interest of those we serve. Grant us that grace here today, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. Chair recognizes Chairman Chokus, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Information and Audits has read the journals of the previous legislative day and have found them to be correct.
Chairman Chokus, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Go change your password as soon as you can.
Mr. O'Neill, the 146 moves the following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Reports of standing committees. Third reading and passage of uncontested local bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 685 by Representative Strickland of the 111th, Duncan of the 26th, Welch of the 110th, Fleming of the 121st, and Belton of the 112th. Bill being entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 44 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotating regulation of specialized land transactions.
Judiciary.
House Bill 686 by Representative Strickland, 111th Duncan to the 26th, Welch to the 110th, Fleming to the 121st, and Belton to the 112th. Bill being titled an act to amend Code Section 9-3-29 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to limitations of actions relative to the breach of restrictive covenants.
Judiciary.
House Bill 689 by Representative Martin of the 49th. Bill being titled an act to amend Part 6 of Article 17 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to health insurance plans.
Insurance.
House Bill 690 by Representative Carter of the 175th. Bill being titled an act to amend Part 5 of Article 8 of Chapter 2 of Title 47 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to membership of certain law enforcement officers in the Employee Retirement System of Georgia.
Retirement.
House Resolution 853 by Representative Bentley of the 139th, a resolution honoring the life of Dr. Dolores Felder and dedicating a bridge in her memory.
Transportation.
House Resolution 854 by Representative Bentley of the 139th, a resolution honoring the life of Mr. William Lee Brown and dedicating a bridge in his memory.
Transportation.
House Resolution 862 by Representative Marin of the 96th, a resolution honoring March 31st, 2015, the Cesar Chavez Day at the state capitol and honoring Mr. Chavez's birthday.
Governmental affairs.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
HB 679 by Representative Kidd of the 145th, a bill relating to review of individuals' criminal history record information. HB 680 by Representative Setzler of the 35th, a bill relating to divorce. HB 681 by Representative Carson of the 46th, a bill relating to highways, bridges, and ferries. HB 682 by Representative Caldwell of the 131st, a bill relating to control of water pollution and surface water use. HB 683 by Representative Dickerson of the 113th, a bill to authorize Rockdale County to exercise all redevelopment and other powers under the Redevelopment Powers Law. HB 684 by Representative Martin of the 49th, a bill relating to dental hygienists. HB 687 by Representative Kelly of the 16th, a bill relating to transfer of funds from Employees Retirement System of Georgia to the Georgia Judicial Retirement System by Superior Court judges, district attorneys, and solicitors general in crediting service. HB 688 by Representative Gravely of the 67th, a bill relating to general provisions relative to law enforcement officers and agencies. House Resolution 810 by Representative Burns of the 159th, a resolution creating the House Study Committee on Short-Term Rental Providers. House Resolution 811 by Representative Kidd of the 145th, a resolution creating the House Study Committee on Casino Gambling. House Resolution 830 by Representative Brockway of the 102nd, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to provide for the creation, purpose, administration, cooperation with local governments, and regulation by general law of transit community improvement districts in which property may be the subject of taxes, fees, and assessments for the accomplishment of the purposes of such districts. Senate Bill 215 by Senator Harbison of the 15th, a bill to create the Schley County Utilities Authority. Senate Bill 216 by Senator Tippins of the 37th, a bill to amend an act to reincorporate and provide a new charter for the city of Ackworth. Senate Bill 217 by Senator Tippins of the 37th, a bill to amend an act to reincorporate and provide a new charter for the city of Ackworth. Senate Bill 231 by Senator Ramsey Sr. of the 43rd, a bill to create the City of Conyers Public Facilities Authority and provide for the appointment of members of the authority. Senate Bill 232 by Senator Tippins of the 37th, a bill to amend an act creating the State Court of Cobb County. Senate Bill 233 by Senator Tippins of the 37th, a bill to amend an act creating the State Court of Cobb County. Senate Bill 236 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd, a bill to create the State Court of Catoosa County. Senate Bill 237 by Senator Gooch of the 51st, a bill to provide for the compensation of the members of the Board of Education of White County. Senate Bill 238 by Senator Burke of the 11th, a bill to create the Bainbridge Decatur County Recreation Authority to authorize such authority to provide recreational services throughout Decatur County. Through second readers.
Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Representative Smith, the 134th District Chairman of the Committee on Insurance, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Insurance has added under consideration the following resolution to the House and has instructed me to report same back to the House with the following recommendation. House Resolution 806 do pass.
We are about to go on to morning orders. We're about to go on to morning orders. If you have signed up for a morning order, then the Chair would ask that you be prepared to come onto the well. We have a number of members who have signed up. The Chair is going to ask that members confine their remarks to not more than 2 minutes each on morning orders. Chair recognizes Representative Kidd for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. You know, it's rarely somebody can come down here and introduce somebody in the gallery that's had an effect financially by millions and millions of dollars on the state, millions of dollars of people across the country, and on maintaining the lives of many children in the state of Georgia and many adults in the state of Georgia. She moved to Georgia 30 years ago and started representing an association called HOG, HOG. That's right, HOG, HOG. HOG stands for Hemophilia of Georgia. When she came into my office 30 years ago and asked if I could help, I didn't know what hemophilia was. I couldn't spell it, sure didn't know what it was. But hemophilia, for those of you who don't know, is a disease that people have that when they get stuck by a briar, when they hit the golf ball in the briar patch, or when they fall at school and have a bad bruise, they bleed to death, literally bleed to death. And so obviously I told this lady, yes, I would try to help her 30 years ago. At that time, the state of Georgia had a very small hemophilia office. All the clotting factor that's used to stop these bleeds by children was stored in a small refrigerator over the Department of Human Resources office for the entire state. She got involved, and now Hemophilia of Georgia, they contract with the state to provide clotting factor throughout the state. They have nurses, they have technicians, they have pharmacies to treat these patients throughout the state. They work with insurance companies, so insurance companies would reimburse for families that have hemophilia, and that people could carry that insurance from one company to another company to better their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, not only has she done stuff in Georgia to save millions of dollars in the clotting factor for patients and save their lives, would you please help me welcome Ms. Trish Dominic and her grandchildren who are in the gallery today. Trish, we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you very much for all you've done.
Chair recognizes Representative Dexter Sharper for a morning order.
Thank you, Speaker. I kept it to 1 minute on my paper, so I'm gonna just read a little slower, and that'll make it 2 minutes.
Or you can save that other minute till next session.
Yeah, I'll do that. Carryover. I rise to commend the Georgia chapter of the National Federation of the Blind. In the early days, the leader of the NFB focused on 3 goals: security, equality, and opportunity for the blind. They work hard to help blind people live independently, have equal opportunity in employment, and have equal access to housing, transportation, and places of public accommodation. The philosophy of the NFB is that a person's blindness should not be the characteristic that defines his or her future. The organization works hard to raise the expectations of the nation's blind people so that they can live the lives they want to live. So if y'all don't mind, please help me recognize Garrick Scott and a few members of the Georgia chapter of the National Federation of the Blind.
Chair recognizes Representative Sam Teasley for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, as I was waking up and trying to shake the cobwebs off from a good night's sleep, albeit all too short of a sleep, I perked up when the news radio program that I was listening to decided to reference the Religious Freedom Bill. subject, as many of you know, that I've been working on for the last year or two. And as too many on the far left, and unfortunately some in the media are prone to do, they mischaracterize this bill as an attempt to deny service to some in the name of religion. I wholeheartedly reject that. You see, the far left, is in full-blown don't confuse me with the facts, I've already made up my mind mode. And so the burden of proof is so staggeringly one-sided in favor of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that it ought to be embarrassing to the far left to keep repeating these mendacious claims about discrimination. I've asked for over a year for just one example of how the Religious Freedom Restoration Act has provided a successful defense of invidious discrimination. It's been in place in federal law for over 20 years, and this protection is in 30 other states. Been asking for a year for just one, and I'm still waiting. The whole purpose of this bill is to place some restriction on government's ability to burden people of faith, and if requiring government to demonstrate a compelling governmental interest, before it can burden a person's free exercise of religion is considered discrimination, then we live in an upside-down world.
Chair recognizes Representative Mickey Stevens for a morning order. Looks like he's going to be joined by other members of the Savannah-Chatham County delegation, Chairman Stevens, Representative Bryant, and Representative Hitchens.
That's all right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. It's indeed an honor, and a true honor and a pleasure to come down to the well today to recognize a group of young men, and some of who I taught and coached in my other life. I come to recognize Jenkins High School boys basketball team, who is the state champions, Class 3A state champions, and under the tutelage of Coach Bakari Bryant, and my assistant coach for over 20 years when I coached Coach Lovely Heller, and Jerry Smitty Hamilton, and Troy Smith. These are the coaches of this young men. And I would like to stand and be recognized at this time because there's a group of great student athletes here. And one other thing too, I said I would recognize the team captains who led this group of young men, and that's Malik Ben Levy and Eric Johnson. Y'all wave your hands, guys. All right, thank you, guys. Really appreciate that. You do Savannah proud. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Marin for a morning order.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. That sounded really good, Mr. Speaker. Marin. You got to roll the R. Well, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me this morning to do the morning orders. I rise this morning to recognize and commend the contributions of the Georgia Haitian Americans and recognizing today, March 31st, 2015, as Georgia Haitian American Legislative Day at the state capitol. Georgia is fortunate to be home of more than 13,000 residents of Haitian descent, and that number is annually increasing. Georgia is 5th in the nation for Haitian immigrant settlement, according to the Center for Immigration Studies. And the Georgia Haitian American Association continues to establish uplifting events, partners with other organizations, and provides essential services to the community. Today, on the gallery, I want to recognize from the Haitian Consulate, Haitian Vice Consul Jeanette Davis. I want also to recognize Joseph Burlus and Elizabeth Clairville They're from the Georgia Haitian American Association. With that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like members of the House of Representatives to recognize the group that is in the gallery having the Georgia Haitian Americans Day at the Capitol. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Representative Dukes for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the General Assembly. We come before you today in recognition of Albany State University Day at the Capitol. And as you might notice, the roses on your desk have been presented to you by the Albany State University Association. And that is in recognition to the fact that Albany State University will be the only band in Georgia that will be represented at the National Rose Bowl Parade in Pasadena. Today we have with us the president of Albany State University, Mr. Art Dunning, and his lovely wife, Karen. The president of the National Rose Bowl Association, Mike Matheson, and his lovely wife, Ann. Would you all please stand? The wives and the president. All right, thank you. Along with them, we have members of the Albany State University family, the Albany State Band, and just a whole host of Albany State friends. We would like for you all to stand along with them so they can be recognized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we yield the well. And last but by no means least, the Queen of Albany State University, would you please stand?
Chair recognizes Representative Bruce for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, everyone. I came to the well because of House Bill 633. There's a document on your desk this morning that's showing that I was supporting this legislation. And initially, I thought that we were providing a benefit to seniors, and I never failed to take an opportunity to try to help our seniors. But then I was told, and I found out that the legislation was not vetted with the Atlanta Board of Education, and there's no income gap on it. So I had to remove my name from support of this bill until such time as we find out what the impact would be to the Atlanta Board of Education. And so hopefully the clerk's office will pass out the most recent copy of this bill that shows that several of us removed our names from it. And I just wanted to make you aware of that. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Welch for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I could, Chairman Weldon has stepped off the floor for a moment, but I wanted to recognize up in the gallery we have the Circle of Friends and Living Waters for Girls. If those could please stand up, please. I'd like to just recognize you. And then there's Rachel right there at the front waving. She is a namesake of the legislation that you'll be considering today in SB 8 and SR 7. So I'd like to give them a warm welcome from the Georgia House.
Chair recognizes Representative Darlene Taylor for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. We're on day 39, and we've all been away from home. It's been a long time. We often worry about what we're missing at home and what's happening and how's our family, how's our business. Well, I want to share with you tonight, last night our chamber had their little annual dinner and conference, and I worry about my business like everybody does when we're up here, but I was so proud to find out that my business won the Small Business of the Year last year. And I deserve no credit. This is my son who has been running the business for me while I've been able to be up here trying to do the people's work. So rest assured, life is going on, and you will make it through all these difficult days. But again, I wanted to share how proud I was of my son. And I've had a few folks call, and the most important thing that he said, not only the hard work that he's done, but he sees the eyes of God in our business. And I wanted to share it with you. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Harbin for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I have a privileged resolution I'm going to ask you all to sign. For those of you that don't know, Ross King, who is Executive Director of the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, he's a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of many of us here, but his daughter lost her battle with melanoma cancer last September, and she went down fighting because she started a fund for other kids with melanoma so that hopefully one day we'll rid ourselves of this disease. And so we want to honor her memory, and I would like to ask you, I'm going to place this in the ante room. I would like to ask for all of you to please sign it if you can when you find the time today so that we can pass this resolution and let Ross know how much we in this state appreciate his daughter and how much we love him and his family and wish them well, and they are always in our prayers. Mr. Speaker, I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the House Education Committee, Chairman Coleman, for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Education Committee, there will be a short Education Committee in the anteroom immediately after I step down from the podium. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes for a morning order Representative Tom Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to talk about a longtime member here who has been in the hurt locker for a couple of weeks, and just want to welcome back Representative Harry Geisinger, who was first elected in 1968 here. And Harry, we missed you last week. Welcome back. Let's go to the finish line, brother.
We are about to go on to the rules calendar. We are about to go on to the rules calendar. Chair is going to ask that all of the meetings that are going on around the walls and in the aisles disperse or go to the ante rooms so that other members that are in the chamber and seated will be able to give attention to the members in the well. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 618.
House Resolution 618 by Representative Clark of the 101st, creating the House Study Committee on Adult Day Services. This resolution has been referred to the Committee on Human Relations and Aging. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Clark, Representative Valerie Clark, to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring for your consideration House Resolution 618. And this is requesting your permission to create a House Study Committee on Adult Day Services. Georgia is an aging state, as we hear so often. We have a variety of services for seniors, and this includes transportation, in-home elderly care, Georgia Power discounts, Medicare counseling, but few save the state as much money as do adult day services for seniors. They prevent our seniors from being unnecessarily placed in institutions and allows them to age in place. These can be social, but most of these centers are medical. And they serve seniors with chronic care needs such as Alzheimer's. 40% of the folks in these centers are Alzheimer's patients. And many of our seniors served are Medicaid. Already, before we begin the study, if with your permission, again, the study committee would examine coordination of services, reimbursement policies, which are all over the map, models which work best here at home, advances from other states, and the reason for decreases in the use of these programs with a parallel increase in institutionalization. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask for your favorable consideration of House Resolution 618 to study adult day services for our seniors.
You have no questions?
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration of House Resolution 618.
The lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of House Resolution 618 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the adoption of House Resolution 618, the ayes are 164, the nays are 0. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 767.
House Resolution 767 by Representative Hightower of the 68th. Resolution creating the House Study Committee on Provision of Community-Based Intellectual and Developmental Disability Services. This resolution has been referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Hightower to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I bring before y'all today House Resolution 767. We have an increasing population of developmentally disabled individuals in Georgia, many with aging parents who have struggled for many years to keep these individuals in the community and give them a proper quality of life. Meanwhile, as this body very well knows, Georgia is under a federal order to remove most with developmental disabilities away from state institutions. This resolution encouraged us to study our Medicaid waivers, which allows us to move away from those federal regulations to find ways to ensure, while saving tax dollars or spending tax dollars in the best way to serve these people in the least restrictive means. And I'll tell you, this resolution hits very close to home for me. I have a cousin whose name is Scott Holcomb, who's 52 years old and suffers from Down syndrome. And he is one of the people who's affected by this. And I see his struggle each and every day to be included in the community. So I would very much appreciate your support and your vote on this resolution. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for any questions.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption of House Resolution 767. The ayes are 164, the nays are 0. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 122. Senate Bill 122.
Senate Bill 122 by Senator Mullis, the 53rd, to be titled an act to amend Code Section 48-8-111, the official code of Georgia, annotated, relating the procedure for implementing a special purpose local option sales tax. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Ways and Means, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Rutledge to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bring to you, colleagues, Senate Bill 122 that basically changes the SPLOST bill legislation in line 73 through 77. What it'll do is allow local government flexibility to, in the case of natural disasters, to rebuild structures and added those projects to the SPLOST list, and also able to add locally state-owned facilities in local communities that they can also use SPLOST money to expand on those facilities as well. And that's basically what this bill does. And Mr. Speaker, I checked with Uncle Bobby, and he said this is not tacking on and it should be good. And if there are any questions, I will answer those, or I will ask for your favorable consideration.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on Senate Bill 122? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 122 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of Senate Bill 122, the ayes are 167, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Representative Abel Mabel Thomas to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker and members of this distinguished body. It is an honor for me to present to you the Doctor of the Day. You may remember a week ago, she was here with us, and we are glad that she's back again. Ms. Bernelia Nazario, MD, is the Associate Medical Director and Lead Medical Editor of WebMD. She is board-certified internalist and endocrinologist. She's also board-certified in advanced diabetes management. She's also the chair-elect of the Obesity Society of the Latin American Association section. Dr. Nazario was a guest speaker at URAC Global Summit on Diabetes, a panelist at the American Heart Association 4th Summit in New York City on 2 Corzero Latina. She also participated in WebMD town hall meetings with the First Lady, Michelle Obama. She is a regular contributor to CBS Radio and News and has appeared in various publications such as Women's Health Magazine, Reader's Digest, The Evening News, Parade Magazine, and others. Dr. Nazario works with medically underserved communities where the culture of caring and cultural competency are prime components to their clinic. At this time, I present to you the Doctor of the Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I will keep it short. I know you guys are busy. I just want to thank everyone in the room for the work that you do for the citizens of the state of Georgia, and just tell you thank you. I'm honored to have been selected the Doctor of the Day. Thank you.
You got a lot of stuff going on.
Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 104. Senate Bill 104.
Senate Bill 104 by Senator Dugan to the 30th be titled an act to amend Code Section 50-17-50 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to the State Depository Board so as to delete references to building and loan associations. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Governmental Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Dickey to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen. I bring you Senate Bill 104. This is basically cleanup language relating to the membership on the State Depository Board. It really just reflects the transfer of the position and duties of the Comptroller General from the Commissioner of Insurance a few years back, and replaces that position on this board with the CFO of our state. Also, the board currently has 7 members. This bill also removes outdated language relating to building loans associations, which are no longer chartered in our state. So I ask for your favorable consideration to SB 104. Key.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 104 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of Senate Bill 104. The ayes are 170, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Bill 132. Senate Bill 132.
Senate Bill 132 by Senator Dugan of the 30th to be entitled an act to amend Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to the Quality Basic Education Act, so as to revise provisions relative to the program for high school students who attend post-secondary institutions. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Education, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Nimmer to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring before you today Senate Bill 132. Senate Bill 132 is a dual enrollment, a move on when ready piece of legislation that is a product of the dual enrollment task force that was formed last year. It simply helps to remove some barriers dealing with transportation and funding, to help more students have an opportunity to engage and take advantage of this program. Mr. Speaker, I'll be glad to yield for any questions if there are any. Yes, sir. I yield for any questions.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rogers to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman yield.
Yes, sir.
On lines 145, tell me what promulgate means.
Promulgate in this context is to promote or to publicize the rules and regulations. But if you talk to Representative Watson, Promulgate is also a crossbred fruit and vegetable between an eggplant and a pomegranate. That's just according to which way you want to use it, Chairman Rogers.
All right, will you further yield?
Yes, sir.
The big word on line 152, says sampling. Can you define what sampling is in this bill?
Well, again, it's according to how you want it. In this bill, sampling is taken every 3 years. You'll take examples from different areas and regions of dual enrollment students and their schools and the technical college that they're participating with and see how effective and cost efficient it is.
Okay. Will you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Line 153, that big word there. Can you define what that is, please?
You talking about technique?
No. Extrapolation, I think is how it's pronounced.
Pronounced extrapolation in South Georgia, but yes, sir, Chairman Rogers, extrapolation techniques are the process of determining or estimating by taking a consistency of variables across the sampling.
Will you further yield?
Yes, sir.
And on lines 206 and 207, it says FTE counts based on after October 1st were prior to November the 17th, then March the 1st to prior to May 1st. Can you tell me why it's done on those dates?
That's already existing in code, but I will draw your attention to line 207. November the 17th should be a date that you'll always remember. I believe that's your brother's birthday.
That is correct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I support your bill.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers. Mr. Speaker, if there are no more...
further yield?
No, sir. I'm going to yield the well, Mr. Speaker, and ask for the House's favorable
Not even if it were a chairman?
Yes, sir. I yield.
Chair recognizes Chairman McCall to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman yield.
Yes, sir. Chairman McCall.
I'm in favor of your bill, but I do have a serious question.
Yes, sir.
And let me give you a hypothetical, if you don't mind. First, at what grade level do you start moving on when ready?
9th grade, when they're in an eligible high school.
All right. Is it not true that, say, if a guy or student in the 9th grade decides that he wants to or she wants to move on when ready and winds up participating in a technical college program and decide they want to go on and graduate from the technical college, and when they get to be 21, 22 years old, decide that's not exactly what they want to do, and they say, well, I may want to go back and apply to a university system or a college. If they didn't get the English credits or the math credits in high school because in the 9th grade they went to a technical college and went on and did whatever their career path wanted them to do, is there some kind of a measure to let them get those English credits to be able to get into a university?
Yes, sir, Chairman McCall, and I will try to find it very quickly here on the courses that are required to be eligible for dual enrollment. If you went on to your example, your hypothetical here, if you went on and you got a degree or certificate from a technical college and decided you wanted to apply to the university, the Englishes and core curriculums that you had taken in the dual enrollment in classes, if you needed to take any remedials, those will be offered to you, as many of our students coming out have to when they go to a university, but it will not hinder their participation or eligibility to go to a university.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration, House, of Senate Bill 132.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Chairman Randy Nix to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come to support this bill. I was on the task force that looked into the dual enrollment process, and all this does is streamline that. We've had dual enrollment for a long time, but a lot of our students were not taking advantage of it because of a lot of things that were kind of confusing. And a lot of it had to do with money. This task force sat down and looked at every opportunity and it's probably one of the best that I've been on with the give and take between the Regent system, the technical college system, and DOE. So this will open up a tremendous amount of opportunity for a lot of our students, give them an opportunity to participate in some things they have an interest in. I think it will keep them in school and will certainly help a lot of them graduate from high school and have a skill that they can get a good job in. So I will yield the well, and I certainly ask your favorable consideration of Senate Bill 132. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the well. No other speakers. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on Senate Bill 132? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of Senate Bill 132 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of Senate Bill 132. The ayes are 171, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to Senate Resolution 7. Senate Resolution 7.
Senate Resolution 7 by Senators Honorman of the 45th, proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to provide that the General Assembly by general law may impose additional penalties or fees for the offenses of prostitution, keeping a place of prostitution, pimping, pandering, compulsion, solicitation, masturbation for hire, trafficking, sexual exploitation of children, and sodomy, to provide for related matters and for other purposes. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Juvenile Justice. The committee recommends that it do pass by substitute. What a mouthful.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the Juvenile Justice Committee, Chairman Weldon, to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, today I bring to you quite an opportunity today. This is an opportunity to put a hedge between the state's children, that's your children, your grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and those who come after us, between them and houses of ill repute that seek to enslave them. Senate Resolution 7 is a constitutional amendment that would provide for the creation of a fund and a fee that would be placed on adult entertainment institutions, better known as strip clubs. This is the enabling legislation or enabling resolution that allows the citizens of this state to make a determination on whether we will have a fee or an assessment to be required to be paid by strip clubs. And I want to bring to your attention, there's several letters that are on your desk. We have these young folks up here in the green. Would y'all stand up, please? Stand up. The shirt reads, "I am Rachel." Rachel's here today, and she's standing with them. And thank you, Rachel. You're one courageous young lady. And we applaud not only you, Rachel, but everyone standing with you, because they're here with you today because they understand the gravity and the significance of this legislation. Thank you for being here. So, there's been a minority report that says this is unconstitutional because it has a Senate bill number. I want to draw your attention to the very first line. Well, after it says 15 and then the LC number says the House Committee on Juvenile Justice offers the following substitute to Senate Resolution 7. So that means it went through our committee, and this is our substitute to the Senate resolution. I want to say thank you very much to Andy Welch and to all the folks on Mary Margaret Oliver, all the folks that are on the Juvenile Justice Committee that worked very hard to bring this bill to a point where we believe it's ready for the people of Georgia. We heard testimony from all sides, and I think we heard about 3 days worth of testimony. If you have to listen to some of the things that happened to those children, it seems like 3 months. So, without further ado, I'm going to ask that you vote for this Senate resolution. And I also want to bring to your attention the letter by Jill Travis that's on your desk. Jill Travis is a member of the Legislative Council, and she wrote a letter stating that addressed the issue that the minority report has brought up. And what it says is that essentially, when we pass a bill and is properly enrolled with the Secretary of State after signed by the governor, that it is presumed, and it is, constitutional. There's a separation of powers issue going on here, and there's a Senate over there, and there's a House over here, and there's a governor down on the second floor. And that when it passes those bodies, and it goes to the governor, he signs it into law, and it's enrolled with the Secretary of State, it's a good bill, and it's a good law. And furthermore, this resolution allows the citizens to vote on whether we should assess strip joints for providing places of enslavement of these young children. I'm going to ask for your vote. And Mr. Speaker, if there are any questions, I'll yield for questions.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I will yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Hawkins to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I will yield, Mr. Hawkins.
Will this be known as the Weldon poll tax?
Well, I'd be honored if it was known as that, but I think this is going to be known as Rachel's Law.
Thank you for your work on this important piece of legislation.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
I will further yield, Mr.
Chair
Speaker.
recognizes Representative Pack to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I will yield.
To my friend from Ringgold. reading this resolution along with the enabling legislation in Senate Bill 8, it lists an assessment on the gross line of these businesses. Is that right?
Well, businesses to me indicate that they would be legitimate, and some folks call them legitimate. I don't call them legitimate. They're just existing because we allow them to exist.
So
but you're right. It is a gross. It is on the gross
profit. It's
profit.
not after all the expenses, taxes
Correct.
on that.
That's correct.
Do you know any other instance in the history of Georgia where we impose an assessment on the top line versus the net income of a business?
Well, not on legitimate businesses, but I have I think we differ. Well, we may differ, may not. But in this situation, these are not legitimate businesses. These are strip joints. These are places where young people are brought, not for the purpose of expanding their education or expanding their horizons. The people that are going to be paying this tax are the people who are profiting on the backs of young people who are being enslaved. And accordingly, I just feel like this is inappropriate. They're profiting from this. They're illegitimate, and they need to pay for the problem and the cancer they have brought to each community in our society. Mr. Speaker, if there are any further questions, I will yield.
You have a number of questions. Do you further yield?
Mr. Speaker, I know there are other folks that want to speak on the bill, and I can come back later, and I'll be glad to address those questions later. And I'm not avoiding the questions. I just want to
You're just not
be
taking
mindful.
them.
I'm just not going to take them at this time, if that's okay with you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I'll yield the will.
We do have people that wanted to speak to the bill. The chair recognizes Representative Welch to speak to the bill. Speak to the resolution, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Susan, Daniel, Marguerite, Amy, Lakeisha, Jennifer, Pamela, could be Andy, it has been Rachel. These are all names of people, girls, boys, that once had a life as a child in a family. One parent, two parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles. People, these children had a chance at a future. But because they were duped, because they were drugged, because they were told the guy online was their boyfriend or girlfriend, they find themselves caught up in a life of prostitution, not of their own making, but of the making of someone making $32,000 a week profit off of them. A pimp and a John that wants that demands that service, that heinous crime from a child. This is human trafficking. This is child exploitation. 800,000 people are trafficked internationally and domestically each year. 18,000 in Georgia, 18,000 in the U.S. are used for sex or labor. The FBI has named Atlanta as one of the 14 cities in the nation with the highest incident of child exploitation in the form of prostitution. 100 girls in Georgia are exploited each night in Georgia. 7,200 men pay for sex with adolescent females in Georgia each month. The victims, 1.6 million children, are runaways, and when they run away, they're typically approached by an exploiter within 48 hours. SR 7 establishes a legal and a physical safe harbor for girls and boys that have run away from home or have been seduced to leave their homes and enter into the life of child exploitation. This provides a place of refuge for them to go, a place that law enforcement, when the child is picked up, can take them there and they can find a safe harbor away from the pimp, away from the exploiters, and that then they can serve the purpose of being rehabilitated and hopefully testify against those perpetrators. Send those men to jail. Send those women to jail that exploit the children. That's what the bill SB 8 does, and the SR 7 that you're considering now establishes that by constitutional amendment, so it'll be a dedicated fund so that the assessed fees that are assessed against strip clubs, the penalties that are imposed against the perpetrators will go into a dedicated fund. Currently, Georgia, we as a General Assembly, we appropriate no dollars from this state, raised revenue in this state, to fight these crimes and to protect these children and to rehabilitate them. We appropriate federal dollars in the form of TANF money that has been going down on a downward scale over the last several years. You cannot fight exploitation with putting criminal laws on the books alone. You have to fight this by providing a safe shelter for the girls and boys on the street to find a new home and to regain their identity and their lives. That's what these two measures do. They ensure that this General Assembly going forward and this state going forward will always have that dedicated money to help those children. Just let me share with you some of the horrors that these children face. When exploited, they'll face HIV, AIDS, STDs, infections, TB, unwanted pregnancies and abortions, complications from many of those services that will be provided into terms of providing abortions, trauma, suicide, aggression, post-traumatic stress syndrome, major depression, anxiety disorder, and disassociation. The cost to rehabilitate these children, it's about $6,000 just to house them. Over the course of the testimony that we heard, 8.5 hours of testimony taken in by the chairman and by the members of the Juvenile Justice Committee over the course of 3 days with a weekend in between, to allow for anyone that wanted to come and speak for or against the bill. 2 hours of debate regarding the bill and the amendments proposed. This was well vetted, well thought out, well argued, and ultimately supported overwhelmingly by a majority of the members of the Juvenile Justice Committee. We made amendments, we made adjustments, and we made changes to make these bills better. Just think about this. Just last year, 387 girls were taken off the street in Georgia that were the victims of child exploitation. 387. That's 387 lives that were lost to the streets that now have been rescued. The cost of providing them with housing alone is about $26 million. The fiscal note on this legislation would raise about $2.5 million. About 10% of the cost we just saw incurred last year. Nonprofit organizations are doing a yeoman's work in this effort. Churches are doing a yeoman's work in trying to provide those services, the housing and the services, the rehabilitative services that are needed. But we as a state need to step forward, and we need to have a dedicated funding mechanism so that we can ensure that generations ahead of us, there'll be that funding for them. There's more I'd like to add to this measure, but I want you to understand that Rachel, who has put her name on the bill, has decided that she didn't want to be called victim anymore. She didn't want to be a number. She wants to be a person again. She wants to have a family. She's in college now. She wants an opportunity at the life all of us have enjoyed. Who knows? She and her and others that have found themselves in this unbelievably horrible situation may be sitting here one day as representatives of this great state. They may be doctors, lawyers, accountants, entrepreneurs. But if we aren't protecting them, if we're not giving them a fighting chance to get over the horrors that they've experienced, they will be lost. And all the creativity, the potential, the future for those individuals, their liberties to be free from this slavery, this modern slavery, will have been lost. And I ask you to join me in support of this measure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Representative Stacey Evans to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise in support of SR 7 and ultimately SB 8. In juvenile justice, it's been said already that we heard hours and hours and hours of testimony, and we listened to story after story of victims and the terrible accounts of what happens to these young girls. And I'm sorry that you won't get to hear all of those, because I think if you heard those, you would definitely be voting in favor of this bill. But one of these stories struck me really hard, and I wanted to share it with you. And it struck me because it was about a girl named Ashley. And many of you know, about 3 years ago, almost to the date, during my second year of service here under the Gold Dome, I had a little girl. Her name is Ashley. And obviously the story of this Ashley and my Ashley, who's at home enjoying art time and playtime, are very different at this point. But it just struck me hearing this name that belongs also to my daughter, that these are our children. This could happen to anyone. A lot of times this happens when children run away from home. People run away from good homes as well as bad homes. And so I think this could be all of our children. And so I wanted to come here today and share with you the story of Ashley. Ashley, age 17, is creative, and her hobbies include dancing, singing, and fashion design. She describes her strengths as being outspoken, outgoing, and honest. Growing up, she was physically abused by her mother and consequently placed in de facto custody at age 14. In the past 2 years, Ashley has had 10 different exploiters. Ashley ran away from her group home after she met her first trafficker online. She ended up in the area of Atlanta known as Bankhead, where her trafficker introduced her to exploitation by walking the streets. Over the next few months, Ashley worked for several traffickers in the Bankhead area soon after she became pregnant. After becoming pregnant, she turned herself into the police because she felt she had nowhere else to go. She was placed in RYDC due to her pending charges and had her baby while she was detained. Her baby was sent to a foster home, and Ashley was placed in a series of group homes. After being released from detention, Ashley met another trafficker on Backpage. He picked her up and told her that she would be dancing for money for him. He took her to dance at an adult entertainment establishment in College Park and provided Ashley with a fake identification card since she was only 16 at the time. He was friends with the owners of the club, and all those involved in managing the club were aware that Ashley and other girls dancing at that club were underage. The trafficker had her dance in the club during the evenings and work in hotels during the day, forcing her to repeat this routine for approximately 2 months. Ashley was ultimately recovered when law enforcement picked her up in a sting operation and was referred to Georgia Cares, which is an organization, an angel of an organization that provides services to children that are exploited through trafficking. Georgia Cares is currently providing services to Ashley, and she has been placed in a specific safe home. Ashley has goals of finding stable placement, pursuing an education, and to be reunited with her children. Ladies and gentlemen, these girls and boys who are trafficked are victims. They're not prostitutes. They're children. They're our children, Georgia's children, and we absolutely must protect them. So for my Ashley and your Ashley and all of Georgia's Ashleys and Rachel's, please join me in voting yes on SR 7. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Simone Bell to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here before you today in support of SB 8 and SR 7. I think in order for us to have SB 8, we must have SR 7. This is a bill known as the Safe Harbor or Rachel's Law. The essence of the legislation is to establish a formal protective response for victims of a horrific crime of sex trafficking. I want to ask you to take a moment and close your eyes and visualize what you think a child who is being sex trafficked looks like. Now I want you to shift your paradigm and think about your nieces and your nephews, your sisters. That's really what these children look like. They are not a thought-up, thrown-away group, but they are children who are living in our homes, going to our schools, and who are in our churches. I want you to see a child as young as 10, 11, 16 years old, and look at their vulnerability. Places in their life where they haven't developed a maturity to discern what it means to be preyed upon. These are the children that SB 8 and SR 7 will protect, prevent, and restore to society. Again, these are the children in your cities, in your counties, and in your towns. No situation in life is left out of this predator relationship between a manipulative predator and our vulnerable youth. I've seen this firsthand in my 20 years of being an advocate for our youth. I've seen it in the youth who've come through my church as we've done neighborhood outreach. I've seen it in the schools as young men and women stand outside of your middle schools and high schools looking for those who appear most vulnerable. I've seen it happen in group homes of young children who have either run away, been thrown away, or walked away. And now it is one of the biggest crimes committed through the internet. In Georgia, we spend about $91,000 a year to house a youth in juvenile detention. We heard testimony in the Juvenile Justice Committee that preventive and restorative services can start at $6,000. Even if we spend upwards of $20,000 per child, that is a much better investment in children than $91,000 to incarcerate them. What I'm asking you to do today is do what is right for our children. Do what is in the best interest of our children. Today, it could be somebody else's child, but one bad life situation could make this any of our children. Please vote in favor of SB 8 and SB 7. Georgia's children are depending on us to save and to rescue them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Cantrell to speak to the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I come to the well today to speak on behalf of Senate Resolution 7 and the enabling legislation, Senate Bill 8, which will protect children who have been victims of sexual exploitation and help ensure that they are not victimized again. Unfortunately, Atlanta holds the embarrassing distinction of being the #1 city for sex trafficking in the United States. I'm ashamed that this has occurred under our watch and hope that you will join with me in taking bold, clear steps to address this important issue. The horrors of sex trafficking cannot be overstated. Why Atlanta? I'm glad you asked. There are many contributing factors as to why our state's capital is the #1 city for this sick activity. However, one factor stands high above them all: the adult entertainment industry. In our committee meetings, as a member of the Juvenile Justice Committee, we heard testimony after testimony from young ladies and others of the clear correlation between this awful industry and the trafficking of young people. Some would like to deny this correlation, but the evidence is overwhelming. The age of entrance into sex trafficking is approximately 12 to 16 years of age. The predators who run this industry target our children in crisis, runaways, homeless youth. They use physical violence, sexual assault, psychological abuse, manipulation, drugs, and threats to lock these unsuspecting teens into prisons of sexual exploitation. However, there is good news. Victims of sex trafficking can be set free. Treatment and rehabilitation of child victims of sexual exploitation can be effective given the proper strategy and adequate resources. My colleagues, we have a compelling interest to fund treatment for victims through sources that are linked to the problem. We also have an obligation to provide coordinated, efficient, and effective delivery of services to sexually exploited children. Further, we must make sure that minors who are trafficked are treated as victims rather than criminals in Georgia. Senate Bill 8 does just that. On a personal note, as someone who has volunteered over the last several years in assisting with a safe house for ladies who have been rescued from sex trafficking, which happens to be located in my district, I have seen firsthand how victims of this heinous crime can be rehabilitated and have their dreams of a full and meaningful life restored. We can offer hope and an opportunity for a second chance. Having the chance to stand before you today and advocate for this critical piece of legislation is one of the main reasons that I ran for office. The opportunity to make a real difference in real people's lives, especially those who struggle to speak for themselves. I urge you to join with me today in making a difference by supporting Senate Resolution 7 and the enabling legislation, Senate Bill 8. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative F. Strachan to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an opportunity today, members of the House, for us to make a real difference in the lives of many children that have been affected by these crimes or potentially could be. I became involved in this issue after a referral from my local police chief and a request for legislation in certain areas of the code. And as I became more involved, we heard testimony that you've already heard about in committee. I gained even a greater appreciation for the need for this legislation, the need for this resolution from the law enforcement perspective. And testimony was offered in committee that this resolution and bill are needed to assist in law enforcement's work under our laws and to ensure that law enforcement can do what's necessary to protect our kids. In committee, and I'm not going to repeat much of the argument that you've already heard concerning the testimony, but we also heard from an assistant district attorney that prosecuted a case under existing law, and it involved a 14-year-old victim that was identified as her trafficker was trying to bring her into a strip club here in Georgia, and that under existing laws that prosecutor was unable to the fullest extent, take on the criminal operation that was in place to help to shut it down. And it's that testimony and that correlation which was offered in committee, and that's the basis that I ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Resolution 7 and Senate Bill 8. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Okay, we have members who wish to be heard against the resolution. Chair recognizes Representative Stover to speak against the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, I understand that I am in the minority in this House right now when it comes to this particular bill. There's a reason I don't believe in the bill, though. We've heard the clubs called illegitimate. If they're illegitimate, let's just outlaw them, eliminate them from the state of Georgia, and we no longer have to worry about people being sex trafficked through them if that's the case. Now, One of the major problems I have with this bill is it's going to provide $2.5 million in funds, right? That's what we're saying. It's a general assessment to provide $2.5 million in funds. We have $2.5 million in our general budget. We can pay for this without taxing some organization extra to cover the cost. We can provide money to law enforcement to conduct raids and shut these strip clubs down for criminal issues. The laws are in place. We don't need this resolution. We don't need this bill. The laws are in place. This bill does not address the underlying problem of sex trafficking. Sex trafficking occurs 70% of the time on the internet, not in a strip club. Again, 70%. Let's propose a tax on all internet transactions, all internet hosting accounts, anything that could be connected to the internet. Let's tax that and add it into the fund. It's a great opportunity for us to do this. We seem happy to tax more. Now, I've got a pile of papers back on my desk. It's a huge pile. The vast majority of those people will benefit directly from this legislation. Of course they support it. How could they not? Their organization stands to gain. This legislation, despite the letter that you see on your desk, to me is unconstitutional. It both raises revenue and it appropriates funds. The appropriation of funds, in and of itself, has to originate in the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, the letter did not address the appropriation of funds portion. So if it is in fact legal that it raises revenue, I do not feel it is legal that it appropriates funds. SR 7 and 8, SB 8, do nothing to reduce human trafficking. In my district, there was a company that in fact trafficked people. Many of you are going to be surprised what they actually did. They brought in people from Mexico and from Europe, and they did so on a regular basis. They had them living on cots. They were feeding them food, charging them for lodging, charging them for food. They were not committing sex acts. They were cutting granite countertops. Their payback came because they were working in that facility in order to be here. But they were kept for at least 10 years to do so. Finally, the federal government stepped in and shut them down through a raid. The same way we could do the strip clubs if they are, in fact, trafficking. The same thing we can do to massage parlors who are not taxed under this bill, but we know they're committing sexual acts inside their facilities. We know that these people are, in fact, doing things that they should not be doing in the massage parlors. This bill is wrong, and quite honestly, it's dishonest. Again, I repeat, 70% of all human trafficking takes place on the internet. Utah is taking a much more reasonable approach. They're removing the current requirement for prosecutors to provide fraud and coercion for a conviction. North Dakota and Texas are increasing penalties for convictions and the statute of limitations for victims. These states are not waging war on legal businesses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Peasold to speak against the bill or against the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My friends, I support the underlying intent of this legislation. We all know that human trafficking is a massive problem, and we need to do everything that we can do to prevent these crimes before they occur. Nobody in this room denies that. My problem lies with the tax on one specific industry. I want you to think for 1 second about the precedent that we're setting. By levying a tax, you can call it an assessment. You can also put a horn on a cow and call it a unicorn. Doesn't make it a unicorn. What we can do now, if we pass this, we can say any soda manufacturer, maybe based in Atlanta, we're going to put a 1% tax on your gross revenue to fight childhood obesity. Should we put an additional 1% fee on every doctor because there are some doctors who are bad actors and operate pill mills. Think about the money that we could raise on doctors to pay for addicts of prescription drugs. And as my colleague mentioned earlier, every speaker today has mentioned the involvement of the internet in these transactions. Why no tax on the internet? I've specifically asked supporters and sponsors of the bill to tell me specifically which clubs are involved in this trafficking. I couldn't get a single person to name me one of the clubs. And look, let's be honest. If they are guilty, let's throw the book at them. Put these monsters in jail where they belong. But we're going to have to give law enforcement tools on the front end to fight this crime. But what we are saying today is that it does not matter if you obey the law or not. It doesn't matter if you pay your taxes or not. What matters more than anything is whether or not a politician says you are a legitimate business. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Representative Henson to speak against the resolution.
Oh, do I need to be recognized?
I recognized you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to my colleagues. I'm not here to oppose, I'm here to both support and oppose. And I know that's a very strange one. And at this, the issues of sex trafficking and the exploitation of our young children is a very, very crucial issue and something I'm very glad we're addressing. Senator Unterman has spent a lot of time and a lot of folks have participated in this. And I totally support getting these young girls off the streets and into safe havens. My objections with the gross fee on the clubs, and where else do we address or tax gross, not net, when we're looking at income? I haven't conferred with the owners of the clubs. In fact, I haven't been in any of the clubs. But I want to know if they were part of the conversation, part of finding a solution and how to fund this. I also question the statement about the businesses not being legitimate. They have to pass inspections in their local counties, get permits, comply with the laws and ordinances regarding hours of operation, safety inspections, and so forth. They also have to get liquor licenses and renewals of their liquor licenses from the Georgia Department of Transportation. So the question is this a random pick at a business? And shouldn't all clubs who serve liquor participate? You know, and we keep talking about the clubs, and it's been brought up already that the problem's internet, sleazy hotels, and believe me, I have a bunch of those. I have 5 exits off 285. This is a big problem with the sleazy hotels. But let me just go back to clubs and just point out what someone goes through. Everyone who works there has to undergo a background check by the police. They have to be fingerprinted. They have their picture taken. If you're a felon, you are disqualified. All the dancers, the wait staff, the bouncers, so they get their licenses with the police. They get their background. They get the fingerprints. But we go back to the internet. None of that is done on the internet. Just get on the internet. You know, they've told you 70% of this starts with the internet. So how do we address that? It's a bigger question than we're probably able to really do. So I support both the bill and the resolution's intent, but I believe the funding issue needs to be addressed. We also need to check the constitutionality of it and if a revenue bill can originate in the Senate. So I ask that we take a better look at this and then move forward. So I just want to thank you very much for letting me speak both for and against this bill. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Kidd to speak against the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's with great reluctance I come down here to speak against the resolution. Years ago, in my other life as a lobbyist, I represented the adult entertainment industry. After the legislature passed a bill outlawing all of them, and the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional, that's when I was hired. I got to know some of the owners. Some of the owners I wouldn't take to a cemetery. I wouldn't want to be buried in a cemetery that my family's buried in because they were some bad dudes. Some of the owners were very good people and are really, really good personal friends of mine now, probably one of the best 2 or 3 friends I have, 2 or 3 of the owners. And they're the owners of these clubs that hire drug-sniffing dogs to go through their club to make sure that in the locker rooms, in the lockers of the dancers, there's no drugs, that there's no drugs in the place. They even go through the parking lot to make sure there's no drugs in the cars of the people parking there. They have off-duty police come in all the time. They have a separate room, so if somebody looks like they're leaving intoxicated, they put them in a special room and give them coffee and sober them back up, or hire a cab to deliver them somewhere. They won't let them drive. They are reputable, good, tax-paying people. I also represented different organizations and groups. I represented the Medical Association, 8,000 doctors, as was mentioned by a previous speaker. What percent of those 8,000 doctors are bad? 1%, 5%, 10%? What percent of the lawyers in this state are bad lawyers? 1%, 10%, 50%? Who knows? What percent of, depends on who you talk to, what percent of the people in this room are bad legislators? Here again, it depends on who you talk to. 1 person, 10 people, whatever it might be. Do we tax everybody because a certain percent is bad? No, we don't. In this bill, we do. Everybody in here, myself included, wants to stop the exploitation of children. You know, it was mentioned in here that exploitation comes from Johns and pimps. A club is not a John or a pimp. Someone mentioned a person, a pimp, taking someone into a club. You know, the club might not have hired that person. There are laws on the books now to stop all this, and we should stop it. We should find ways to stop it. We should give the law enforcement people more tools. I don't think taxing one industry is going to raise enough money to make a significant difference. If you want to make a significant difference, then raise our taxes to protect our children. Don't raise one industry from the legitimate people to tax that industry. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
That is all of the members who have signed up to speak on the resolution. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on Senate Resolution 7? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is a minority report signed by Representative Quick and Representative Allison, and I understand Representative Quick will give the minority report. Chair recognizes the lady from Athens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I am pleased to have the opportunity to explain the minority report and explain my no vote in committee, and to explain why I will be a no on these measures. And I want to make it clear that this in no way is any sort of criticism or statement or negative reflection on the hard work that everybody has done on this issue of sex trafficking. I have nothing but the utmost respect for Representative F. Strachan, who carried HB 244 here in the House. It did not get out of committee. There were some changes in that committee, which frankly, had those changes been made in juvenile justice, I would not be up here talking to you right now. But we do have a situation where I think that it's important that we understand what we're voting on and what it does and what the testimony in committee was. For that reason, I hope you will all indulge me and please look at the minority report in your calendar, because it has the fiscal note, and I'm talking about the minority report to Senate Bill 8. It has the fiscal note to these measures that explains exactly how much this will cost the state of Georgia to establish this separate commission and how much revenue can hope to be generated here. Now, in committee, we worked very hard, and what Chairman Weldon has said is correct. We worked very hard in committee, and there was a lot of testimony in committee. There were amendments in committee. There were discussions that led to amendments in committee, and I am pleased that I was able to work to, I think, make SB 8 a stronger measure to protect victims of sex trafficking by making the amendment to Representative Oliver's amendment to restore the true safe harbor which protects victims. That's not what this is about, because that is not all these measures are about. It does not stop at strengthening our state response to the heinous situation that is sex trafficking of minors. And at this point, given the number of members of my committee that have come up to speak to the bill, I'm happy this is not a game of dodgeball, because it would be very, very troubling at this point. But I do want to ask that you take a look at these measures. And I want to just agree with one thing that's in Ms. Travis's legal opinion at this moment. It will be for each and every member to decide whether or not these measures violate the Georgia Constitution, because the way that the courts have interpreted this, once it's actually passed, is if we pass it, nobody's going to be able to successfully mount a court challenge on that basis. So I don't want you to misunderstand and think that, well, if it's unconstitutional, I'm going to be costing the state of Georgia a lot of money with somebody bringing a suit on that basis. That's not it. And I don't want there to be any misunderstanding, because there are measures that we take up here where there is an argument about that, and if it's constitutional and unconstitutional on certain other grounds, it can result in unnecessary expense to the state of Georgia. And I don't want there to be any confusion about that. But we do take an oath, and I, for one, take that oath seriously. And that is why I set forth the provision of the Georgia Constitution in both of the minority reports, so you would have plenty of time to get out your iPad or get out your smartphone and actually look something up that pertains to what we're talking about here, and look it up for yourself. Don't take my word for it, but this is what it says. All bills for raising revenue or appropriating money shall originate in the House of Representatives. And so we need to be mindful of the precedent that we're setting, and we also need to be mindful of what costs there are associated with these measures. The enabling legislation does create a commission, and if you look on page 3 of the fiscal note, it will tell you the costs to the state of Georgia for the Department of Revenue to implement and monitor the state tax. And let's do one thing if we can when we take this back to our districts. This is a tax, and it's fine if we want to vote to tax someone. Let us embrace it, and I called this in committee the Truth in Legislating Amendment, to try to call it a tax, and then it was settled on to be an assessment. But Georgia law defines a fee, which is how this measure started, as required payment for special privilege or a service rendered. And that is clearly not what this is. Perhaps when they come up to close this out, they'll tell us what they believe the definition of an assessment is, because I'm not quite sure. But a tax is defined under Georgia law as an enforced contribution imposed pursuant to legislative authority for the purpose of raising revenue to be used for public or governmental purposes. Now, I'm going to acknowledge that this is a valid and laudable governmental purpose for which this revenue is raised, but raising revenue is exactly what it does. In connection with the oath that we all took, you know, as an attorney, I am both, it's a blessing and a curse, truly. Some days it's a curse, but I also take another oath to support and defend the Georgia Constitution. And so I wanted to take a moment to ask everybody to reflect on why you're here, what we're doing, what the Georgia Constitution means to you, and whether or not it's a rule that you want to abide by, to draw that line in the sand and say, I support these measures. I will do what I can to find money to appropriate dollars for these very valuable services, but I will not violate the Georgia Constitution in the process. And if you look at Senate Resolution 7, it clearly relies on an enabling legislation that raises revenue and then appropriates that tax revenue to a specific class of, albeit very deserving, victims. I think our testimony was there were some, at this point, 300 to 400 identifiable young girls that these monies could help at this point. Someone said they needed about 1.5 million right now, and I would have loved the opportunity to try to figure out how to move some funds around. And in fact, Representative Oliver in committee called to our attention another dedicated fund for child abuse that we found some money just sitting in a dedicated fund, which I hope they'll be able to avail themselves of at this point. But in terms of where we are today with appropriating this money, I hope that we will just find it in our hearts to not only look to providing services to victims, but doing it in a way that doesn't violate what I believe is a violation of the Georgia Constitution. And Mr. Speaker, with that, I'll yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. Chair recognizes for the closing argument for the chairman's time, the chairman of the Juvenile Justice Committee, Chairman Weldon. Final 20 minutes. We're doing business in here and not in there with Mr. Tudor.
Mr. Tudor was telling me it was in the anteroom. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this point, I would like to yield 3 minutes of my time to Representative Mary Margaret Oliver.
Gentleman has that right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank Chairman Weldon and Representative Andy Welch for the incredibly strong amount of work, and the faith community in Georgia that has spent so much really good time on focusing on what the Bible tells us to do for the poor of our society. But I come up here now, very briefly, to remind you that strip clubs do not come and testify in front of our committees. They don't come in and wave their flag or their posters and say, I'm the strip club, don't do this. But what they do is litigate. And we had a very serious discussion. I felt like I was back in a constitutional law committee, a constitutional law class, on how you assess a industry and the legal nexus that you must show to uphold that assessment in order to benefit a specific group of victims. And I say to the strip clubs right now, bring it on. You want to litigate this issue, bring it on. I feel extremely confident. Confidence is frequently a bad thing, but here I think it's a good thing. I feel confident that a litigation challenge to this statute will come down in favor of victims, not the strip clubs. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to vote for this constitutional amendment. And whenever the strip clubs come to court, I'll send out a message to you and we can all come watch. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the chairman of the committee, Chairman Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 3 minutes of my time to Representative Welch.
Chair recognizes Representative Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. Ask yourselves just some common sense questions. The businesses that we're talking about, do you want them to locate in your neighborhood? You want them to locate in your downtowns? Is this what we want to see happen, or do we know? And did this committee hear testimony about the secondary criminal impact that exists around these industries, these businesses that locate? We did. We heard extensive testimony about it. And what we're talking about doing with this specific assessment is that we're saying that the taxpayers in Blue Ridge, the property taxpayers in Blue Ridge, the taxpayers in Swainsboro, the taxpayers in Blakely, Georgia, the taxpayers in Dawsonville, the taxpayers in Locust Grove, those taxpayers, should we appropriate the money, that the hard-earned money that they're spending to put into this state to pay for rehabilitation? Well, we could do that. Or should we actually assess those industries which are attracting the criminal element and which documents after documents have been presented to the committee, and case law after case from the United States Supreme Court to the Georgia Supreme Court to courts across the United States have recognized that indeed strip clubs bring and attract, create a marketplace for sex conduct, sex acts all around those facilities and occasionally inside the facilities? That's the factual reality upheld by courts across this country. That's the factual reality of the studies that have been done across this country, and even here in Georgia, even here in Atlanta, all of that information provided to the committee. And I ask that you place the burden of this assessment on those who need to pay for it to help offset the cost to our children and the cost to society, and not on the common average man or woman that does not participate, enjoy, or seek out these sex acts or displays of sexual conduct. I ask for you to support this measure. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard that we should tax the internet. And we shouldn't tax these businesses. That's what you've heard today. They're not businesses. You name one positive thing that they provide to your community or any community in this state or to this state whatsoever. Zero. Goose egg. There's no legitimacy in any strip joint or any club that provides this adult entertainment. They don't have your best interest involved. They don't have your children's best interest involved or in mind at all. They've got their profit motive. They've got their own depraved mind to satisfy. You've heard that 1%, that an analogy that why don't we tax soda, or 1% tax on soda companies to fight obesity? The difference between taxing a strip joint and requiring a child not to have soda is that there's a parent that's making a choice for the child. Let's tax doctors for addicts to prescription drugs. That's just as foolish as taxing a soda company to stop a child from having soda. No questions taken by these folks. None. Why is that? They know why. And you know why. These children know why. Why don't they ask Rachel? Why don't they ask Keisha, the lady who came and testified before our committee about how she was trafficked and it all began in a strip joint? We didn't hear that. We didn't hear, hey, let's amend this bill to make sure all the legitimate strip joints are okay, but just the ones that aren't are being taxed. You know what? I don't care what you call it. It's a tax, it's a fee, it's a requirement that they participate in remediating the cancer and the problem they provide in your community and in mine and in our state. This is not their state. This is Georgia. We don't tolerate enslavement of those who have no choice. Today is the day you send a message, and that message is, we're coming after you. You will not enslave our children. You will not take our young ones. You will not take our sons and daughters. We live in a state, we live in a country, as Ed Setzler said when he joined our military, I gave the government a blank check to cash with my life. Today is the day we send the message that they're not going to cash checks with the lives of our young people. Today is the day we stand. Today is the day they're going to hear what we have to say, and they're going to see the laws that we put in motion. Slavery is what they deal in. The slave trade in Georgia today takes a hit. Just as each one of you who have served in our military wrote a blank check with your life and gave it to the United States government, today we start making them write a check. I ask for your favorable consideration of Senate Resolution 7. Send a message. Thank you. And Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for questions.
You have 2 or 3.
I will yield.
Chair recognizes Chairman Chokas to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I'll yield.
Earlier, it was said that there wasn't a precedent for taxing the top line in a profit-making venture. And I just wanted to know if it's true that in the master settlement agreement that was established to settle the tobacco suits, that if that wasn't a tax on the top line.
It's my understanding that, as the chairman has stated, that was a tax on the top line of tobacco companies.
Yes, sir. Isn't it further true that the funds generated by the tobacco tax were used for cancer treatment and cancer development and for community development for the farmers that lost their income from tobacco production?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Mr. Speaker, at this time, I would like to cut off these questions. And I think it's time for Georgians that are elected by citizens of this state to send a message. And I ask for the favorable consideration. I'll yield the well.
Mr. Clerk, would you ring the bell? What purpose does Representative Kidd rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that this legislation several years ago passed a constitutional amendment providing the right for every city and county to vote whether or not they wanted an adult entertainment in their city or county?
If the gentleman so states, we've been on this important proposition now for over an hour, so I think we're going to go ahead and vote it. Is there, the previous question has been ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of Senate Resolution 7 will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the adoption of Senate Resolution 7. The ayes are 151, the nays are 18. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 71. House Resolution 71.
House Resolution 71 by Representative Gordon, the 163rd, creating the House Study Committee on the Hope Scholarship Program award amounts for critical fields of study. This resolution has been referred to the Committee on Higher Education. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Gordon to present the resolution.
Justin? Okay. Again, Mr. Speaker, members of the body, bit overwhelming coming behind such passionate, meaningful testimony. But I do present for you today H.R. 71, which is a simple bill, and I'll be brief as I probably stand between you all and lunch. A study committee to look at the Hope Scholarship Program award amount as it relates to critical fields in the state of Georgia. It's a bipartisan piece of legislation supported by the Labor Commissioner Mark Butler, and basically what it would look at is in career fields that Georgia has a deficit in jobs, any sort of incentive that may or may not make sense to encourage folks to pursue those degrees. I have gone through 4 or 5 different versions, and so I want to take this opportunity to thank the Dean of the House, Calvin Smyrie, and Chairman Rogers of Higher Education, along with his committee, for working with me on this piece of legislation. If there aren't any questions, I'll yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration.
You have no questions.
Thank you.
Gentleman is yielding the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute. The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of House Resolution 71 will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the adoption of House Resolution 71. The ayes are 165, the nays are 2. This resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. I want the House to come to order for a moment. Many of you know that Representative Susan Holmes and her family have been in a fight now for a long time with their daughter Cammie, and we've shared with her, and I know many of you have reached out and many of you have kept her in your prayers. And as you know, Cammie was admitted back to Emory last week and frankly is not doing very well. I talked with Susan a couple of nights ago. They're weary, but they're fighting. Before we recess for lunch, I think it would just be appropriate that we have a moment of silence for Susan and Paul and Cammie and all of the Holmes family. Thank you. Chair recognizes for an announcement the chairman of the House Rules Committee, Chairman Meadows.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There'll be a Rules Committee meeting at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the chair of the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee, Chairman Golick, for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Judiciary Non-Civil, when we break for lunch, if we could assemble here at the, in the well for a quick committee photo. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Chandler for an announcement.
The Women's Legislative Caucus will meet in 514.
Okay, here's our posture. We're going to recess for lunch. The chairman of the Rules Committee has convened his committee at 2 p.m. We're going to be in recess until 2:15 p.m. This House has done some good and fine work this session, and we have worked very cooperatively with our colleagues across the Capitol. But it's time now for them to go to work. We'll be in recess until 2:15.